My name's Chip Comins. I am the chair and the founder of the American Renewable Energy Institute, and known principally for a summit that we produced in Aspen, Colorado from 2004 to 2019 called Our Day, American Renewable Energy Day, and we've been graced by many luminous folks over the years, including President Carter in 2014, and Ted Turner 5 times. T. Boone Pickens came 5 times. I'll stop there because what I want to get to right away is how we connect the dots with the carbon in the atmosphere and the bioeconomy that Wes is talking about, and the roles that the soil plays in it, but particularly the role that energy plays in that. The electricity grid of the United States of America is responsible for 40% of the carbon throughput into the atmosphere from our country. And my colleagues, Sandy McDonald in the middle, Mike Nelson to the right, and Dan Gamble to the left, are all working on this specific issue in earnest. And we are proposing in our panel to help to decarbonize our nation's atmosphere by going from an above-ground transmission system in the eastern, western, and Texas grid, and we're proposing to bury that along the interstate highways and the rail corridors, and even along the river bottoms in a true public-private partnership that would enable us, by burying high-voltage direct current lines, to create a mesh grid where you can put power on in Maine and deliver it to San Diego or anywhere else in that mesh grid. This is the ultimate vision that we have. But we want to start it in Texas because Texas has its own grid. And with the demands of the growing AI and the other electricity, we're going to have a big problem achieving a 10% demand increase by 2030. It's already 2026. That's what they're saying. So without further ado, I'd like for my colleagues to come to the podium and present their material. First up is going to be Mike Nelson. He's a meteorologist for his career in Denver on Channel 9. Anybody who's been in Colorado ever probably saw him on the 6 o'clock weather. And Mike's going to start it off, followed by Sandy and Dan and myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here with you. So our presentation is Money, Jobs, and Power, because we thought that might get through to even the current administration as opposed to trying something else like the environment. The Interstate Highway for Electricity. A little background on myself. I am a retired television meteorologist, 48 years on TV, starting when I was 7. And I've won 20 Emmy Awards, and I am an AMS Fellow. 1% of the American Meteorological Society is elevated to that. And the only Colorado meteorologist ever inducted into the Denver Press Club, the oldest press club in the country's Hall of Fame. I have 2 local bestsellers on weather. They're great if you live in Colorado, the Colorado Weather Book and the Colorado Weather Almanac. And I was actually one of the few people that helped develop the very first weather computer systems on an Apple II home computer in the late 1970s. That is my friend and mentor, Terry Kelly, the founder of Weather Central. It became the world's largest supplier of television weather graphics equipment and is now a part of IBM. And I actually trained Al Roker on the first weather computer that he ever operated. Now, as a television meteorologist, we actually have a rare opportunity and I think a responsibility to talk to our viewers about climate change. It is the biggest threat that we face. We give the viewers all kinds of other information. We are trusted sources, so of course we should talk about that because it is time to start worrying about what kind of world we're going to leave behind for Keith Richards. At the end of the whole thing, it's going to be cockroaches and Keith. And so we ask people, well, what are you worried about? And people in surveys, time after time, come up with these sorts of things: the economy, the cost of goods, national security, immigration, the various wars, etc. And they say climate change is not even in the top 10. The fact of the matter is climate change is in every one of those. If you're worried about those, you're worried about climate change because we know it is a threat multiplier. This is my book, the world's littlest book on climate. 10 facts in 10 minutes about carbon dioxide. You can get it for a free download with that QR code. We're also looking for a publishing partner because these books are free, and if there's anybody that is interested in helping us get the next batch published, we would love to talk to you. You can do that afterward. Another great book I recommend is by Bill McKibben, Here Comes the Sun, and you will learn things such as an acre of corn will produce enough ethanol to drive a Ford F-150 gas-powered car for 25,000 miles. That same acre would drive an electric truck 700,000 miles. So we could do far more efficient work by producing electricity instead of corn ethanol. And as McKibben has said, it's going to be hard to figure out how to fight wars over sunshine. Fossil fuel has been a miracle, no doubt about it. Life without it was cold, dark, and short. Concentrated energy from the sun, essentially the first original storage battery. The energy density is what makes it so valuable, but the fact is burning it is not very efficient. Nearly 60% of the energy is wasted as heat, and the heat trapped by the carbon dioxide is 120 times more energy than it takes to expend the vehicle. And we know there's going to be a huge increase in the need for electricity, not just for electric cars and trucks, but crypto and AI and data centers, high-speed computing, perhaps 100 gigawatts in the next 5 years. To visualize a gigawatt, that is a large nuclear power reactor. And if we do all of this with fossil fuel, we will essentially cook the planet. We must have other ways to do it. There's an energy gap that's growing. We invented the solar panel, Bell Labs, 1954, and we led the world until 2000 when we ceded that to China, and now the Chinese have a virtual monopoly on solar energy, not only the panels, but much of the installation. And the country that becomes the first electro-state is going to be the leader in the world by the middle of this century. China is installing vast amounts of solar energy. Think of that, 256 gigawatts in the first 6 months of last year. That's 256 nuclear power plants, and we are losing the race and running out of time. Now, renewables and nuclear, absolutely. That's the way we've got to be going in the future. Renewable power is reliable on a large enough scale. It is always sunny or windy somewhere. Small modular nuclear reactors, we're hearing a lot about that with Oklo and others. But there are still big problems with delays and waste and security. Star power, nuclear fusion. The joke has always been in my lifetime, it's just 25 years away. Well, in fact, it is only 8 minutes away, and that is the sun. 100% reliable for the next 5 billion years. And an area the size of the Texas Panhandle can supply all the solar energy needed to power everything in the United States, not for today, but electrify our entire economy for the year 2050. Now, we don't propose paving over the Panhandle in panels because if it was cloudy there for a few days, it wouldn't work so well. But look at the surface area required to power the world. You might think it's a big area, but it's very, very small. And just that circle in Africa is enough solar panels, solar energy to power North Africa and all of Europe. And utility-scale solar is quick to put in. Watch this video.
It will take billions of solar panels to meet the growing demand for clean energy. AES is making scale like that a reality. Introducing Maximo, our new AI-enabled solar robot. Max is delivering cost-effective, clean energy to our customers on accelerated timelines. What was once strenuous is now faster, safer, smarter. Max's powerful features supercharge solar construction teams to make this possible. High-speed robotic arms do the heavy lifting and precise installation, while intelligent sensing technology keeps crews protected. Computer vision powered by generative AI delivers exact panel placement. And a mobile microgrid gives Max the endurance to run carbon-free for extended shifts. At the heart of Max, an advanced GPU empowers it to learn and adapt while meticulously tracking construction progress. Solar energy is changing the world. Maximo is changing the world of solar.
Maximo is building the largest solar project in the country called Belfield out near Edwards Air Force Base, 8,300 football fields in size to power an Amazon data and distribution center. We can build gigawatts in 12 to 18 months. We can't build a gigawatt of nuclear in 12 to 18 years. And the cost of solar has tumbled. This is a graph of how it's fallen from $350 a megawatt hour to around 60. It will be around 20 or less in the 2030s. Nuclear power and gas turbines and coal will still be $100 to $150 per megawatt hour. So great other sources like nuclear, but that's like buying your electricity at Whole Foods, where solar energy is getting your electricity at Costco. Cheap and off the shelf. And battery storage costs are dropping dramatically. Every 5 days, the sun gives us more energy than all of the fossil fuel reserves. And the batteries are going to be the grain silos of the next generation. If you want to look that up, look up Silos for Sunshine at that address from Electrotech. All we got to do is move it from source to need. Introducing the SuperGrid, a modern high-voltage direct current transmission system that will be much more efficient, direct current, and it will move all of that wind and solar and gas turbine, all because electricity is agnostic, from one location to the next. A $2 trillion investment, and I will show you it will have a multiple of returns on that because it is going to make land much more valuable. It's a win-win-win for the economy, regardless of which side of the aisle you are on. This is what it would look like running along railroad and interstate highway rights of way. On a synoptic, as we call it in meteorology, or continental scale, it is always sunny or windy somewhere. And at longer distances, beyond 400 miles, direct current is far more efficient than alternating current. HVAC is good for distribution because we can step the voltage up and down. But direct current, you can direct it as to where to go, like a phone call. AC always runs downhill, so we can direct that energy exactly where we want to go. We propose a 40,000-mile underground high-voltage grid. This study was done by Dr. McDonald, and this was run on supercomputers doing trillions of calculations. And what we find is that we lower the average cost of energy for the consumer, save money, and create jobs. Click on that QR code if you want to learn a lot of the sources and background on this. This is a map of the SuperGrid in the corner, and the yellow and red, those are all the buried gas and oil pipelines in the country. There are 2.5 million miles of buried oil and gas pipelines. Imagine if those were all above ground. People would have a fit. But if you bury it, the visual impact is greatly lessened. Witness this case. It's easy to see the power line. This is on the same ranch in California, but can you see the gas pipeline? Can you see it now? Can you see it now? That was buried in the 1960s, 6 feet deep, and all you see is that little sign. And you see these all over the country. Buried oil and gas pipelines. Out of sight, out of mind. Here's what it looks like. That's the conductor with the sheathing. We bury it in a ditch along the railroad or interstate highway right-of-ways or along coastlines and rivers. And what this will do is allow us to build transmission. You might recall the Grain Belt Express transmission line that was supposed to bring wind power from Kansas to the eastern states. And after millions of dollars and millions of lawsuits and delays, it was finally thrown out last year. We wasted $5 billion and almost 15 years because nobody wants to look at transmission lines. In China, they don't care. If a farmer says, I don't want those transmission lines over my land, well, move, Mr. Farmer. And what is happening is we are losing the race and we are running out of time to compete with China. Railroads could be the key. They have lost a lot of their income because they haul coal, and that's going away. They have also put in all their fiber optic. They know how to bury things along the rail lines. Using their rights of way is a seamless way and a quicker way to get this done. We can also do the same with the interstate highways. Texas should be the example. Energy state. All the gas in the world. We also have wind and solar. And Texas is unique because it is the only spot that has all three of the interconnects within the state. a vulnerability, but also an opportunity. If we can do it in Texas, we can replicate it anywhere in the country. Our proposal is a 350-mile underground high-voltage current line from McCamey to San Antonio. And this initial project at $3.5 billion, that's 2 days' worth of the war that we're currently fighting. So if we can do this here, we can do this anywhere. The great American infrastructure projects have changed our country. Republican President Abraham Lincoln with the Transcontinental Railroad, Republican President Dwight Eisenhower with the Interstate Highway Act. Neither of those bankrupted our country. They transformed our nation. We can do the same with the great American SuperGrid. Farmers and ranchers wouldn't be mandated, but they could choose to grow electricity. And that additional revenue could save the farm. I'm going to give you a case in point, a little history. The impact of infrastructure. Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, Republican, signs AB 32 in 2006, mandating renewable energy in California. That prompted the development of transmission lines. How did he know? He's the governor. He came from the future as the Terminator. He knew what was going to happen. Here's what happened because of that law. Antelope Valley up by Edwards Air Force Base in 2008. Mostly failing farmland out there because too hot and too dry to grow things anymore. So because they put in transmission lines per the law, that transmission infrastructure at a cost of $3.6 billion, about the same as we're proposing on this line in Texas, if you build it, they will come, and come they did. Watch what happened in that area as it all changed to solar fields. That is $60 billion worth of private investment because of a $3.6 billion investment. The investors, Warren Buffett with First Solar, Amazon, Google. We also have Duke Energy, a coal company, EDF, big French conglomerate, and Masdar, which in Arabic means source. That is the United Arab Emirates. This is what it looks like. It's almost all above ground, the transmission lines, the battery storage, the solar fields. But the power lines get the product, electricity, to market. And this development is occurring regardless of the big, beautiful bill or the Inflation Reduction Act because it is market-driven, not driven entirely by policy. Initially by leadership, but not entirely by policy. Let's go up to one of these. Big Bow Solar, that's what it looks like, owned 50-50 EDF and Masdar. First utility-scale solar project that included battery storage. If you run the numbers at $60 per megawatt hour, that means that 5 acres of solar panels will produce a megawatt, according to NREL, and that means that the value of a crop of electricity is $50,000 per acre per year. So I asked ChatGPT, and probably burned up a lot of electricity to do it, what's the value of other crops? Corn's $1,000. Almonds are $6,000. Oranges are $10,000. Electricity is a fabulous crop. But you couldn't even grow that stuff on that land. It's too dry and it is too hot anymore. This is what Big Bow looks like. I want to just give you a lesson in economics. It's all the same, hot, dry, and sunny, all subdivided. It's been mined, it's been drilled, it has been farmed, and people own that. It all had to be acquired. So an investor saw around the corner and bought 10 acres for $20,000. Didn't improve it, didn't visit it, just quietly paid their taxes of about $200 a year, and they sold it at the height of COVID for $160,000. That's a 700% return on investment in 7 years. If you know of the rule of 72, at 4%, it would take you 50 years. At 8%, it would take you 25. At the market average of 10, it would take you 20 years to get that. There is that example there. I want to show you this 20 acres of land. It's a little bit north of Big Bow Solar. A smart investor bought that for $14,500 just before New Year's Eve back in 2009. So they went to a party that night and said, I just bought $15,000 worth of flat land out by Edwards Air Force Base. And their relatives said, do you need to seek professional help? What a waste of money. But they knew what was going to happen, and they sold it for $50,000 per acre in May of 2024. That means they had a total $17,000 investment. Their return was $1 million. You might say that's like winning the lottery, except winning the lottery is luck. This is strategy and patience as an investor. And why is that land suddenly valuable? Because at $60 per megawatt hour, that 20 acres alone is going to produce $1 million worth of electricity from now until when the sun burns out. By the way, my wife and I specialize in this type of investment. She's right over here waving her hand. And if you'd like to talk to us or learn more, just click on that QR code and we can put you in front of that type of land to make big returns on your investment. But let's get back to the grid. Wise words for EarthX 2026. The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking with which we created them. When it is asked how much it will cost to protect the environment, one more question should be asked: what will it cost our civilization if we do not? And finally, never doubt that a small group of concerned citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. This is us. You want to learn more about the sources? Click on that QR code. You can contact us. That is our brand new website at the top. Make sure you type in .net, not .com, because I think that goes to somebody else. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over now to my friend, mentor, and colleague, Dr. Sandy McDonald.
Thanks, Mike. I just want to give Sandy a quick introduction. So Dr. Alexander McDonald, who has spent his career in Boulder, Colorado at NOAA with, I believe it's, and you can correct me, but I think you had 2,500 scientists there. And he had quite a few incredible things that he's accomplished. One of them was to help us forecast our weather with his work on the Doppler radar and other systems early in his career. He also invented the science on a sphere that you might see over across the hall there, and he's presenting tomorrow on that, and you might want to come by. But Sandy has written a book based on a study that came from a supercomputer that they gave him down there at NOAA, and after 50 trillion data imports, meteorological data imports, it came up with a plan that he's going to talk about right now. So, Dr. McDonald, if you would please take the podium. Thank you.
You know, it's tough to talk after Mike Nelson. I think his presentations have got so much, you'd probably need about 3 days to unpack everything he said. But it is true. Most technological revolutions, people know they're coming, but they get bowled over by it, like a tsunami that when it actually hits. And so what we're talking about today here at the Bioenergy Conference is there's a tsunami coming. And you can see it in Mike's talk, that if you can make 10 times, 20 times is really closer to it, as much money on an acre of land doing solar panels or wind turbines, that's going to make a difference. And so in my own history, I was just a little boy that fell in love with weather on the high Montana plains. And my uncle's a wheat farmer. I actually had a little stint in my teenage years where I joined a custom combine crew in Amarillo, and we went all the way to Canada. I don't know about wheat, but I learned quite a bit about the bars. But anyway, we have a tsunami coming in the land-owning agriculture of the United States. And it's not something that's going to happen naturally. What we're pushing for in American Energy Institute is to create the infrastructure and the capability for our farmers and ranchers and landowners to take advantage of something that's going to make a world of difference. So today at 3:30, over on the other side, you got to walk about a mile. I thought I was going to get to the Mexican border when I was walking over there. I'll be giving a talk about climate and climate change and carbon dioxide on Science on a Sphere. So I'd invite anybody who would like to see that, 3:30 today, 10:30 tomorrow morning, or 3:30 tomorrow afternoon, if you want to hear how I got started on this. So I'm this little boy who loves weather. I end up at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration working on radars and supercomputers. And I'm in charge of all of NOAA's research, both our laboratory research, the great labs like Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Lab, and I was put in charge in 2005, and I did reviews of all these labs. Go hear what the science that we're doing. Afterwards, my question was, okay, we're talking about the huge threat of carbon dioxide to changing our composition of the atmosphere. Who's working on a solution? And so I decided that we've got a big supercomputer, as Chip says, 50 trillion pieces of weather data. Let's see if wind and solar work. Can we solve the intermittency problem? And it took us 7 years. I thought I was going to do it in 9 months. It took 7 years. We published in Nature, rated at the very top of Nature magazine, the top science magazine. And it basically said wind and solar energy, if they get to really low cost, can solve the energy problem. And it's not just wind and solar. Our studies showed that you need natural gas as the dispatchable energy. I'm an advocate for nuclear if we could bring the cost down. But the problem is, Elon Musk is up there saying, I'm going to build a solar PV plant that by 2030s is going to be turning out solar PV for a levelized cost of $10 a megawatt hour. Our most recent nuclear plants, $18 a megawatt hour. So economics is everything, and the key to economics is if it's going to work, you got to be able to move the energy, and our current infrastructure won't move the energy. So I'm going to see if I can get my PowerPoint up. I'm a little worried that it's not showed up yet. I did send it in, so I'm not sure where our person is, but let me just talk about it since I'm not seeing it. In any case, what you saw from Mike's presentation is this idea that looks like the interstate highway system, except it's underground and it's those big cables. And it works instead of on alternating current, it works on high DC current. And what that means, it doesn't change the fact that we use alternating current everywhere. It's simply like a new level of electricity access that we have. And I'll tell you why it's really important in this venue. What if you're a farmer in Kansas? You still want to grow your wheat, but, or it could be my hometown of Dawson County, Montana, where the ranches are a little bit bigger. They have more like 500 or 600 acres, and I had one of my high school friends, his family had 56 sections. So they could, they could get a lot of solar energy or wheat or whatever they did, and he did. It was a big place. But you got a problem. The problem is when it's sunny in Goodland, Kansas, it's sunny for everywhere for about 500 miles around. And you can see that on the morning weather map. When you look on the morning weather map, what you see is that there's a big low in the east, all kinds of clouds, all kinds of wind, and the west is sunny, and vice versa. So what this 7-year study using weather data and a computer optimization called linear programming, it showed that you can have super reliable wind and solar energy, and at the cost that we have today, you can cut the total cost of energy compared to fossil fuels in half. And that's what economics does. The reason that this country is so economically powerful, a lot of it has to do with Lincoln saying, I want a transcontinental railroad. It has to do with General Eisenhower saying this country needs a mesh network of superhighways. So if you build a factory here in Dallas, you can sell your widgets, whatever they are, to Maine and Washington State and everywhere else. You want to do the same thing with the superhighway for electrons. You want to build a network that looks like the interstate highway system, in fact, even follows it underground, that in your farm in Kansas, here you are, you decided to, keep most of the wheat, but you're going to have about 50 acres of farmland. You're going to make $1 million a year in profits from that 50 acres. But you can't sell it if every time you have all kinds of solar energy, everybody else around has all kinds of solar energy. You've got to be able to move it to where they need it. And that's what this 7-year study showed unequivocally. It said we can solve the intermittency problem of solar and wind energy. We also want to use nuclear, and you actually need some natural gas dispatchable backup to make it all work. That's what the paper all showed. And you can have very low cost power, very low carbon, and ultimately this works everywhere on Earth. So sadly, I haven't quite got my PowerPoint in the right place. I'm sure it was my fault somehow, but I do want to say that we have a proposal for Texas, as Chip said. McCamey, Texas, which is out there in the windy and natural gas area with lots of places for solar panels and so on, back here to East Texas. So we said McCamey to San Antonio could be the first 300-mile demonstration of what ultimately has to be about a 25,000-mile network to show that this works. And so that's what we are pushing for. It's great to be here in Texas. I guess really the last time I was substantively here was with these crazy guys up at Amarillo cutting wheat, but it still is a great place and it's great to be here. And I'd love to hear from any of you come over to see my talk about the importance of getting world leadership in the energy economy, lowest cost energy, and also solving a global problem of climate change. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So thanks, Sandy and Mike. We want to have a bit of a discussion. And also, I wasn't able to talk to Wes about this, but one of our team members couldn't make it, who has a 15-minute keynote, Nico, on Tempest. And so we were just going to ingrain that 15 into our panel, if that's okay with you all. Okay, so we'll be on here for another about 20 minutes discussing what these two gentlemen just said. And so, and also I want to remind everybody that Sandy isn't just presenting today at 3:30, but your other times at the Globe are? 10:30 and 3:30 tomorrow. 10:30 and 3:30 tomorrow. So if you miss them today because you're in here with what y'all doing with the bioeconomics tomorrow, you can come over and learn from the man who invented the science ionosphere that has been seen by over 1 billion people on the planet. It's in a lot of the museums and universities around the world, and here's a gentleman who invented it, so you might want to take advantage of that. Okay, so Dan Gamble, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but you work for EDP, which is one of the largest of the solar companies based out of Portugal. I think it's your charge to oversee some of the data centers, et cetera, when they want to cover rooftops. Say Google wants to do a data center and cover rooftops with solar. That's under your purview. Why don't you explain a little bit how that ties into what we're talking about here today with the SuperGrid?
Indeed. Yeah, so I work in the distributed generation division for EDP, and in distributed generation, we're focused on getting renewables on site, co-located with the load, put it on the roof of the building that's using the energy or nearby, right? And that's been the working framework for renewables nationally, because you don't have transmission costs and you're offsetting a percentage of the total load of the building, and the rest of it's being imported from the grid. So the interesting thing about this panel and this proposal is, to facilitate a network that allows for developing large-scale renewables and getting it to market to, high-density areas where you simply can't build large arrays. In the middle of a city, even on the roofs of the buildings, you can offset only a fraction of the load using the available space. So, how do you get it from A to B? And importantly, why DC? So HVDC has some physical properties that we won't go deep into the science of here, but basically it allows it to transmit underground more efficiently than AC. So, overhead lines, high voltage AC, pretty practical, pretty well-established technology, but unsightly and very difficult to develop new corridors for it. So if we're talking about getting new corridors to new populations or increasing significantly the capacity of the flow of energy, between different populations, we need to look at how to do it underground in a practical way. High voltage AC is limited to around 60 miles before augmentation of the energy. It just, the efficiency collapses as it transmits over distance when buried underground. DC doesn't care nearly as much if it's above ground or below ground. You can go 600 miles without significant efficiency losses underground. So it provides an opportunity for a new style of network development. Another super important thing to consider here, and it's particular to Texas, is that it allows for asynchronous grids to communicate with each other and exchange energy. So globally, all the different AC grids operate out of phase with each other, and they can't really interconnect and sell to each other because you would have destructive interference between the waveforms of the AC power. So using Europe as an example, they have over 30 member states that each operate independent grids that have no reason to be synchronized between the AC waveforms. And they have interlinks between countries where they can exchange energy through HVDC links. A lot of them are in the North Sea. So for example, Norway can sell energy to the UK. UK could sell it back to Norway. And they don't have to try to synchronize their grids to do that because they're selling over a DC bus. And that opens the door to a new form of energy exchange between Texas and the surrounding areas specifically because right now you're sort of on an island, the Lone Star State, right? And you have all this land and opportunity for renewables, but you would have to consume it inside the state with the current model. So I think it's quite interesting to build a link to the Western grid and to the Eastern grid. It would benefit Texas in being able to import energy in times of scarcity, and it would facilitate exporting energy all the rest of the time.
Great. Thanks, Dan. I want to get into the, for those of you who don't know, the way the country's set up, we have the Eastern grid, the Western grid, and the Texas grid. We use about 600 gigawatts per year. The capacity of the grid is in excess of 1 terawatt or 1,000. So we have the capacity. We use about 650 generally speaking, but most of that load goes to the East Coast where the population is. So say about 350 gigawatts there, maybe about 180 out in California, and about 80 in Texas. So you see that it's an unbalanced use of the electricity that's generated by coal, oil, gas, nuclear, hydro, a little bit of geothermal, and about 10% solar and wind across the nation in various. But on top of that, it's important to understand that there's 3,000 utilities in the United States. And 200 of them are the big ones, the rate-based utilities like Entergy or Xcel or Southern Company, and that 2,800 are the little guys like the munis. And but into that mix, you also have the government, the Western Area Power Administration, the Tennessee Valley Authority, et cetera. They run the federal sections of the grid, and all of these are overseen by 50 state PUCs, Public Utility Commissions, and they are overseen by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, also known as FERC. So it's a very complicated system of how we produce electrons and distribute them throughout the nation and how they're consumed. And so remembering that that whole process that I just went through is accounting for 40% of the carbon throughput to the atmosphere each day or each year in the United States. Now, moving over to China, where they have supergrids happening right now, high voltage, direct current. They go for 2,000 miles. They're building them out as fast as they can, and they're eating our lunch in terms of who produces the cheapest electrons. And who produces the cheapest form of electricity is going to win the day, or the year, or the century. And so we need to get on it, and this is how we think we can do it. Now, I'd like to challenge my panel here to tie that to the bioeconomics conference. Let's talk about the money that farmers and ranchers can make with the land that they hold as we begin to see this plan emerge. Mike, you want to take the first stab at that?
When Lincoln signed the Transcontinental Railroad Act and the railroads were built, it opened up the entire center part of the country because farmers and ranchers then could get their cattle to Chicago or New York, get the product to market. When Eisenhower signed the Interstate Highway Act, same thing. Suddenly markets were opened up all across the central part of the country. And when we get the superhighway for electricity built, that means farmers and ranchers could choose to take 10 acres of less productive land, be able to grow electricity, and if you think about it, $50,000 per acre per year, no fertilizer, limited amounts of water, no tilling, and choose to sell electricity, just like many farmers and ranchers in Texas have saved the farm because they had wind turbines on their farm. We could open this up to the entire central part of the country and really save an awful lot of family agricultural businesses.
So there's a concept that came up in the Industrial Revolution which was called comparative advantage. And it just basically says some places are great for making products and other places aren't. And if you can just move the product, you're in good shape. And that's true of wine that is done in southern France that maybe in northern Scandinavia the wine isn't so good. So it's true of electricity. And with electricity, in the Great Plains, you can get approximately 200 billion watt-hours of energy per year on a square mile. So if you go to the Northeast, cloudy states and so on, you can get 1/5 or 1/6 of that. But you can't move it from the Great Plains. So if you have your farm in Kansas and they really need the energy at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on December 10th, you can't move it. So this is an old concept that we're bringing up to date, saying this country has one of the richest wind and solar production areas, but they're actually the less populated area. So 3% of the population in the Great Plains have about 60% of the available wind and solar power. 3% of the people, 60% of the available power. So our idea for a supergrid is that we can take advantage of what really created the Industrial Revolution, and that is comparative advantage. Take the lowest cost energy, make it available over the country. Just like everything else, you've got to pay for the transport. People pay for transport of oil from the Persian Gulf to the Gulf Coast, at least they used to. This is a case where we can take the lowest cost energy, make it available, and have a huge increase in the value of what our landowners, our farmers, our ranchers are able to produce.
I'd like to also comment on that before we go down to Dan's comments, and that is that the farmers and the ranchers, they get about $100,000 per wind turbine. That could go up or down depending, but the reality is that when they know a wind farm's coming along and they're having a tough go making it, raising the cattle, you know, the average small family farm is about 500 acres, I understand. And these guys are always, you know, working right on the margins throughout our country. The food producers, you know, and the milk producers, the meat producers, and so to be able to put a solar farm or you know, a wind turbine or a wind farm, you know, 10 of them is going to give you $1 million a year. What the heck? Who doesn't want that? So they're lined up. They want to work. And the beautiful thing about wind is that you can still graze your cattle around the wind farm, and you can still cultivate your crops. So, and then with solar, we can also, believe it or not, I went to China and saw the biggest solar farm in the world, and it was 100 square kilometers. This is back in 2018. The technology has been much improved since then, but they held it up 8 feet off the ground and they grew goji berries underneath there. So they were cultivating high-value crops and producing high-value electrons. So Dan, how do you guys see it over there in Europe? I know that you spend a fair amount of time in Europe, and how is your company, which I believe has somewhere in the magnitude of 20 gigawatts of solar installed around the planet. That's $20 billion worth of solar for everybody. What are you guys, how do you see it in terms of the agribusiness over there and then also in America?
I mean, being in the North America division, I can't speak too deeply on the European economics agriculturally, but I think the important point here is that this is, we're talking about networks and markets and getting things to market, right? So agriculturally, you know, the Great Plains are only able to generate products that are valuable to the broader community, to the broader world, if they can get that stuff to market. You know, that started with railroads, then it became highways. A bushel of corn, you know, in Montana, if you don't have a railroad or a truck to put it on, is worth very little. But a bushel of corn that you can sell to New York is much more valuable. So, you know, the same thing applies here, the network effect of being able to produce a known commodity. You know, electrons are a commodity just like corn, and if we can produce them and export them to markets that need it, then we've solved for a problem that benefits people on both sides of that market. You know, regardless of whether that's Europe or North America. In North America, we have this great advantage of having, you know, harmonized legal system across the country relatively. There's some regulatory hurdles relating to those 3,000 utilities in 50 states, but you know, a lot of that stuff can be solved for when there's enough of a market benefit that everyone can agree upon.
Great. So before we go to, I'd like to be able to do a Q&A. Do you have that availability here where we can put a microphone around to people that want to ask questions? Okay. If everybody wants to do that, we'll take some 5 minutes at the end. But before we get there, to just go down the panel here and let's talk about the market barriers. Why isn't this happening? It makes so much sense. And also, how are we going to pay for it? And I think I want to start with Sandy on that last one.
Okay, so one of the problems we have is basically a legal and regulatory problem. If you, I put solar panels on my roof a few years ago. I love it. Basically, it allows me to run my electric car, and I haven't noticed the gas price changing. But the big thing about it is when I'm generating a lot of solar power on my roof and I'm not using it, it goes straight on to our kind of low voltage distribution network. Now people say, well, you know, if I have a, you know, 10 acres of solar panels, I can't do that. And the answer is yes, you can. And what it amounts to is we've got a system that's built for fossil fuels. It basically made the whole world rich over the last 200 years, and it's a fabulous thing. But things change. So when you want to do design, something I call energy culture with an I, when you want to have an energy culture system, you basically design the regulations, you design the power system. So let's just take a standard rural electric. My uncle's farm was on a rural electric. They had, it seemed like when you get a big snowstorm, the power lines would go down. But what you can do is you can take a look at how much of that power line is being used. Can you do the same thing I'm doing with my house? Can you, do you have to build a new power line, or what is the capacity factor of the power going out to a farm in rural Texas? It turns out about 10 or 20% of the line is being used most of the time, and sometimes it's 80 or 90%. So what you have to do is have the ability to have a smart grid where these new iron air batteries store the energy, and when the line is only being used 20 or 30%, then you turn on the batteries and you sell your electricity to New York State or somewhere else. So we can design the infrastructure, and particularly the regulatory and legal structure, to encourage farmers. I'm not talking about a big company comes in and does it. For solar panels, if you have 30 acres and you put them in, I want to design it so the farmers can basically put up the money and get the benefits that Mike Nelson just explained. And so far, I haven't had much luck on that, because the people who own the electricity monopolies and the whole system is built to fight that. But that's actually why I loved coming to this bioenergy, this BioEconomy summit, is to say there's a big revolution coming, and we can fashion it so it's great for our existing landowners, agriculture, ranchers, and landowners.
Mike?
There are some comparisons with history. Abraham Lincoln went to the frontier, which was Iowa, and realized that for national security, we needed to have transportation all the way across the plains to the West Coast, and that he was the leader that pushed the development of the Transcontinental Railroad. It was then built by private companies with government contracts, Union Pacific and Central Pacific. Eisenhower saw the same thing after he came back from the war and saw the great transportation system that Germany had, and realized for national security, we've got to be able to move our army quickly from coast to coast, and pushed for that. That was leadership. Schwarzenegger, leadership as far as cutting carbon emissions. Those three leaders pushed for the development. The development was all done with private money coming in to build these things. So we need the combination of government leadership and foresight, along with market forces and private investment. And so what we're looking for is a partner to say, $3.5 billion, I can put that project in and supply the AI needs that Eastern Texas is going to require, and we can replicate that anywhere else. And one more quick thing on a national level is national security. If we were to have a massive solar flare, and look up something called the Carrington event in the back in the days of the telegraph, it set the telegraph wires on fire. That was a massive solar storm that the induction into the lines for the telegraph caught the buildings on fire and shocked the telegraph officers. If we had a massive solar flare or an electromagnetic pulse from a nuclear device, a terrorist attack, it wouldn't shut down our power system for days or weeks. It would shut it down for months, if not years. But very few of us know how to live as a pioneer anymore. So it would put our country into a major chaotic event. Undergrounding would shield much of our transmission system from the worst effects of either a solar flare or an EMP, let alone severe weather. Remember Texas just a few winters ago. It was a lot generation, but some of that was due to power lines being knocked down in that winter storm. So it's really a win-win-win. Economics, national security, and individuals making a lot of money. Dan?
And finally, on Mike's point, the reason that we don't have transmission built out at the speed and scale necessary is because of the NIMBY effect. Nobody wants these overhead lines over their, backyard or ranch, and so something that should take 2 years takes 20. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was going to say also, I think it's important to recognize that this new network of HVDC interlinks doesn't really threaten the established monopoly utilities. So they have monopolies that are granted by the public utilities commissions of their respective states to protect the consumer, their subscribers, in their assigned territories. This is not about stealing their subscribers or selling directly to the consumer, the end user. This is like a business-to-business network where utilities can buy and sell between each other, and where potentially farmers can become merchant generators. That's a new thing in the 21st century, that an individual with 100 acres can become a merchant generator and participate at the business level in the economics of the grid. But this is not in any way a threat to the end user subscribers or even the existing distribution network and metering systems. It's not about that. It's how do we allow utilities to efficiently generate and exchange energy between each other and between disparate generating resources and potentially energy storage resources. Another advantage of the HVDC grid is that the power electronics that convert the energy on both ends can be dialed in and calibrated precisely. So if you want to put 1 megawatt in, you want to take 1 megawatt out, it's 100% efficient 99% efficient conversion. But you say you want 1 megawatt, you get 1 megawatt. The AC system is more of an unmanaged network where water flows downhill and you saturate it and you do your best with what you have. But it's difficult for grid operators to manage disparate resources, and it's one of the resistance points to developing a highly saturated renewables-based grid, is because they don't know how to measure and manage energy flows on an AC network.
Well, that's brings us right to the end of our panel. Want to have a quick lightning round, so everybody gets their last thought, and it's got to be delivered in 10 seconds or less. Go ahead, Mike.
If you build it, they will come.
The world leading countries in 2050 will be the ones that make this revolution happen the fastest.
We all need more energy and we want it cheap, so let's build a network that allows us to buy cheap energy from where we can produce it.
The future is here now, and it's called high voltage direct current buried supergrid. Thank you very much.